Last year, I played some very good games, and I thought it would be fun to go over all of them and give my thoughts on them and stuff. Yeah, that's the video. Sekiro is so fucking cool. So, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice came out in 2019, and I played it in 2019, but I also played it in 2022, so I'm including it in this video. This is not just games that came out in 2022, this is games that I played in 2022. But Sekiro, really fucking good game, like unbelievably good game. I kind of want to, I shouldn't. I almost want to say that Sekiro is underrated, but you know, you know. What I will say is that proportionally to how good it is underrated. Like, people don't talk about this game enough. It's so fucking good. It might be my third favorite game, like top 3. It's that fucking good. One thing that I will be mentioning throughout this video multiple times is this whole idea of like games going for a certain thing and then doing that thing really well. Kind of like they have a certain vision for what the game is gonna be like, and then they absolutely fucking hit that. That's what I like in games, and Sekiro is exactly that. It's this is a game where they wanted to focus on the action, and they focused on the action. I think Sekiro has straight up the best combat system out of any video game ever created, which is a pretty nice thing to have. Also, I feel like Sekiro is really, like, it feels really whole. It feels complete, even though it didn't get DLC and everyone kind of wanted DLC. But I think that's just a case of people wanting more of this good thing. I don't think Sekiro's really lacking in any real area. Like, most Souls games have some kind of flaws that you can kind of point at. Like, Demon's Souls is pretty linear. Dark Souls, some of the late game areas are not the greatest. Dark Souls 2, how much time you got. Like, most Souls games have some kind of thing that people point at as like the bad part of the game. But like Sekiro, it doesn't really have anything like that. Like, the biggest thing you will hear is that the game is more linear and it has only like one weapon. You know, it has the prosthetics and the weapon skills or whatever, but you know, it only has the basic katana, right? But that's the point. That's the point of the game. It's a more linear action game, so of course it's going to be a more linear action game. Like, I don't think they were trying to create Lost Isolate, you know, I don't think they meant to make Dark Souls 2, but with Sekiro, this is what they wanted to do, and they did it really fucking well. And in Sekiro, like, the fucking bosses, just, dear god. Like, I think my favorite boss still might be Arceus from DS1, but that's, I think, there I will admit that there's a good bit of, like, bias, but in terms of, like, what boss I enjoy fighting the most, I haven't decided what I'm gonna do regarding spoilers in this video, so whenever I will be talking about spoilers, I'll give a warning specifically for that, like a game-by-game basis type of thing. But I don't really have any need to spoil anything about Sekiro, so I'm not gonna. But yeah, final boss Sekiro, one of my favorite bosses of all time, fucking fantastic fight, and so many fights in Sekiro are amazing, like it's just so good. Sekiro's world and setting have this really nice thing going on that Bloodborne also has this, where it's a lot more down to earth and more like human than the other Souls games, and that makes the supernatural elements that are there much more like impactful. And overall, I fucking love the characters and story and world of Sekiro. It's really fun. I know there's a good amount of people who didn't play Sekiro because it's a bit like different from the other Souls games. So if you are one of those people, play it. Really, you need to play it. It's really fucking good, I promise you. But yeah, let's move on to the next game. I played Legends Arceus when it came out, and it was a really weird experience. I really enjoyed it, but it overall like left me, for a long time I wasn't really able to like properly come to a conclusion of like what I actually think about this game. But I think now that some time has passed, I have not touched the game in like probably like 10 months or something, but now that some time has passed, I can kinda try to give my opinion on the game maybe. I feel that it's a really fun mix-up on the Pokemon genre, and it was a nice kind of change of pace for a bit. But it definitely ends up feeling kind of like a spin-off in a way. And that's I've seen that whole debate of like, is Legends Arceus mainline or not? From what I've understood, Pokemon themselves said that it's mainline, so it's mainline. But I find that kind of dumb. I understand that it's mainline, but I don't agree with it. There's a distinction right there. It's kind of like if they came out and said that Pokemon New Snap is mainline. It's like, okay, I guess it is then. But what's the point of a classification if the games within that classification don't like fit, you know? Legends Arceus feels very, very different from other Pokemon games. I would say it shares as much in common with the normal Pokemon games as something like Colosseum or XD, but those aren't mainline. Everyone agrees that those aren't mainline, so I don't really understand why this one suddenly is. And before you say, oh, it's a Game Freak, well, BDSP. That's not made by Game Freak, yet it's still mainline. So, I don't know, I find the whole idea of calling this game mainline kind of stupid, because the whole point is to classify these specific kinds of games. And I would argue that this game doesn't really fit into that classification. But whatever, this doesn't matter, it's just a term that people use to classify things. It doesn't actually determine anything about the game. I feel really conflicted about this game, because at the same time it was a really enjoyable experience, but it also isn't really what I look for in a Pokemon game. But then at the same time, I've kind of come to realize that what I look for in a Pokemon game is probably never going to happen anymore. That's probably another video that I should maybe do one day, of talking about like what I like about Pokemon. But put it this way, there's a certain kind of Pokemon that I really, really like. And there are multiple other types of Pokemon that I also like, but a bit less. The certain kind of Pokemon that I really, really like, I don't think we're ever gonna get that again, right? That's not me being like, oh, it's like Game Freak lazy or whatever. No, it's just that people don't want that kind of Pokemon. They genuinely just don't. In the past 2 years or so, I think I've kind of come to terms with that, of like, we're not really gonna get the kind of Pokemon that I would really, really want to get. So I guess I'm fine with them just kind of doing whatever, just experimenting and seeing what comes out of it. Overall, as a game though, as just a standalone thing, not thinking of the implications for the franchise, Legends Arceus is really fun. It's really, really good. The characters are really fun, and the overall like story and world building is insanely good. I'm gonna go with the spoilers here. Spoiler warning for Legends Arceus. The whole like setup and reveal of the story and like the point of the game was so fucking cool. Space-time distortion, and then like the fucking whole reveal of Bolo. I don't know how people generally feel about that. I feel like I haven't seen that many people talking about like the story of Legends Arceus, but I really, really enjoyed it. They didn't really spell out a lot of the things. They kind of let you figure it out yourself. And there's like so much hidden lore and story in Legends Arceus that is just, it's so cool. I really, really like that aspect of the game. And I mean, speaking of Bolo, the fight against Bolo, holy shit, dude. That was like maybe the best battle in any Pokemon game in a long time. That's what I'll say. I'm not ready to say that it's the best battle in any Pokemon game, but it's up there. It is up there. The overall kind of like feel of Legends Arceus, from the OST to the visuals to the characters and the setting and everything, it's really unique. It feels really different. And I think the one thing that I will say, we're going back into like franchise implications here. I've seen a lot of people, the minute that Pokemon Legends Arceus was announced, I was seeing people talking about, when are they gonna do Legends Kyurem? Stop! I don't want to see another Legends game for a long time. I don't know if what they're planning with this, I don't know if they're planning to make it into a series, I don't know. But I personally, I really, really don't want this to be another remake series where they now have like 2 different remake series running, and then, you know, there are people who seem to want there to be the Let's Go remakes, the normal remakes, and the Legends remakes. Why do people want remakes so bad? I don't understand it. Just play the original game, dude. I guess to somewhat wrap up my thoughts on Pokemon Legends Arceus, it is a game that I feel kind of conflicted about, because as a singular game, I really enjoyed it. But I don't really love the Pokemon franchise implications that this game might have, and I don't really like the way I saw a lot of people reacting to this game, and the kind of like potential message that the Pokemon company will get from the reaction to this game. I don't know, maybe I'm just overreacting, maybe I'm reading into things too much, but that's kind of how I feel about it, I guess. I'm interested if they're gonna stray even further from the normal Pokemon game kind of thing, or if they're gonna keep Legends Arceus as like a side series or something. I don't know, but I'm interested to see what happens, and I'm hopeful. The one real issue with Legends Arceus was that the timing of the release was not the greatest, because, you know, I got the game, I played it for like a month, it was great, but then I kind of had to stop there, because there was this certain other game coming out. You might have heard of it. fucking Elden Ring, dude. This game, holy shit. So even though this game is right here as the third game, which if you haven't noticed, we're going through this like chronologically, like which games I played first. And I did play Elden Ring in late February when it came out, but I also played it a week ago. This is the only game in this video that I played through twice this year. So yeah, this is technically like the third game I played in 2022, but also the last game. Yeah, Elden Ring, it's just like, what do I even say about this game? If I had to describe Elden Ring with one word, I would go with overwhelming. This game is just so much. Let's start from the beginning, right? It's, I think 2019, we've had Sekiro. Sekiro was great, I loved Sekiro. And then we start to hear these rumors of a Great Rune. Remember Great Rune? These rumors of like an open world Souls game. You know, E3 comes around, and there it is. Elden Ring is the most hyped I have ever been for a video game, and the most hyped I think I ever will be. Like, I don't really see anything topping that. Dude, remember Yakul? Remember Yakul? Remember him? Fuck Torrent. I want Yakul. Then we got the Whoopers. Here's my 2020 Game Awards Whooper right here. My most prized possession. Just, yeah, the wait for this game was insane. I remember Summer Game Fest when they showed the game for the first time, like properly. Holy shit, dude, I died and came back to life watching that trailer. Then there was the network test. That experience, dude, the network test. Walking out of like the beginning area for the first time, seeing Limgrave. Just holy shit, dude. Holy shit. It was actually amazing. It was so good. And then the game released, and it's just, it was like actually just overwhelming. That's the best way to describe it, because not only was like, it was the only thing I was playing, it was the only thing I was thinking of, but also, if you looked at the internet, it was the only thing anyone was talking about. It was literally just Elden Ring everywhere, and yeah, it was insane. I think I'm now gonna talk about the actual game. Spoilers for Elden Ring. If you have not played it, I cannot recommend it enough. It's insanely good. You should play it. The first playthrough of Elden Ring was so fucking magical. Seeing the map get bigger and bigger continually. Like when I played the network test, I thought that Limgrave was like maybe half of the game. Like I thought that it was maybe like another area that was like about as big as Limgrave, and then that was it. I was very wrong. And just, goddamn, the game is so fucking huge. There's so much to do. As I said, everyone was talking about this game. That's like the only thing you would hear about was Elden Ring. And because Elden Ring is it the 7th? Yeah, it's the 7th Souls game. At this point, people already have like an idea of what makes a Souls game good and what makes a Souls game bad. So I feel like people were really like hyper-analyzing Elden Ring from the very beginning. Like people were looking for things to talk about and looking for things that were like bad and things that were good and stuff like that. I feel like that led to this thing where a lot of people were talking about the bad parts of Elden Ring because I mean, everyone agreed that the game was fantastic, so there wasn't really much point in making a video just going like, yeah, Elden Ring is good. So because of that, I think a lot of people focused on like the parts that they didn't like about Elden Ring. But I feel like all of the things that people talk about, that I've heard people criticize about the game, are like such just minuscule things in the grand scheme of things. Like, this game is fucking massive. There's so much to do. When I was doing my second playthrough, there was like a point where I was like nearing the end and I was like, okay, what are some things that I should do before I like end this playthrough? Like, are there any things left? And then I started going through like a list of things to do, and just there is so much shit. There is so much stuff in this game. So many quest lines, so many bosses, so many areas, and like all of it is so good. And sure, there are some things where like some of the late game enemies deal a bit too much damage, or I don't know. I just feel like that's really like nitpicking at this point because of just how fucking huge the game is. People obviously also criticize like the reuse of bosses, but I honestly didn't find it to be that big of a deal. I didn't really mind seeing a lot of the mini bosses again. There were some that I didn't really like, but most of them I thought were pretty fun bosses, so I didn't really mind that. I guess I also want to talk about the replayability of Elden Ring, because I do agree that that is one point where the game is somewhat lacking, but I feel like that's kind of understandable. In a game like this where there is just so much to do, a replay will be kind of difficult, because you have like it ends up feeling like this thing where you need to do all these things before you can go forward and stuff like that. And you've already done these in previous playthroughs, but now you need to do them again because, you know, you need to get like the certain items and whatnot. The thing is, after I finished my first playthrough of Elden Ring, I was kind of like tired of the game. As I mentioned, this game, just everyone was talking about it. I was playing it like non-stop. So once I finished the game, my first playthrough was 100 hours. So once I was done with that, I just kind of like wanted to do something else. And I was meant to replay the game a few months after, but then I kept on getting like sidetracked by things, and eventually it went all the way to December, where I started thinking about the fact that I'm gonna record this video and I'm gonna talk about Elden Ring, and I should probably replay the game because there's been like balance updates since then, and also like to kind of refresh my memory a bit. And then Elden Ring won Game of the Year, and at that point I was like, fuck, I really have to play this game. So I played through it in the past few weeks, and yeah, this second playthrough was so good. It was so enjoyable. I feel like with the first playthrough as well, I had this thing of wanting to like complete it kind of as fast as possible and get through all the content fast, so that I don't get like spoiled, or so that I can kind of keep up with the discourse or whatever. But now, being able to just play the game at kind of whatever pace I wanted. Well, I guess I was kind of rushed because of this video, but not really. And yeah, the second playthrough was so much fun. Actually, I got the Flame of Frenzy ending this time, and last time I got the Age of Stars ending. I actually haven't become Elden Lord at all. It is kind of funny now that I think about it. I mean, I guess in the Age of Stars ending, you do become Elden Lord, but you don't sit on the throne, is my point. So yeah, I haven't done that yet. I need to do that in the next playthrough. I haven't even really touched on like the lore yet. Like all the characters, like fucking Radahn. Radahn is like one of my favorite characters in the Soul series. Like what the fuck? This motherfucker stopped the stars. He stopped them from moving. Then there's like fucking Rykard, and it's fucking. I really love how much we get on the character specifically, because in something like Dark Souls, you have like the 4 Lord Souls. You have Nito, Seath, 4 Kings, and Islith. But they don't really like, I guess outside of Seath to a degree, we don't really get much on like their personality or what they're like. Whereas in Elden Ring, we directly get to talk to some of them. We find out a lot through like lore and their different like interactions and stuff like that. Like Elden Ring's lore at the same time feels so like grand with all these like demigods and shit. But then also, it feels kind of down to earth because of how like human a lot of the characters are in their own way. I can't really go into Elden Ring lore here because it's a pretty big topic, but it's fantastic. That's all I'll say. And just yeah, I could keep going for the rest of the day just about how fantastic this game is, but I think I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not really sure how it ranks in my like favorite games, but I would say it's definitely in the top 10, maybe even top 5. But yeah, that's enough about Elden Ring. Let's move on to the next game.
Hello.
So, it's Super Mario 64. It's good. I enjoy it. I guess I should go into why I played this game. So here's a bit of a story time for you. When I was but a small wee pigeon, I was severely lacking in intelligence. I was a dumb fuck, right? So because of that, I bought a Nintendo 64, and only after I bought it, I realized that it's Japanese, and I wanted to play European games, which doesn't work. It didn't come with anything, it was literally just the console. But it was like €5, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, I had this Nintendo 64, and I couldn't do anything with it. Then later, I don't remember how much later, but later, I got a European N64. I played some games with that, not a whole lot, but some. Then, you know, many years went by. And in recent years, I've been really into like playing NTSC games, and I wanted to play some Nintendo 64 games. And then I realized that I have this Japanese N64, and I found out also that all of the accessories, like the cables and everything, are region free. So I literally just had to like take the cables from my PAL N64, put them into the Japanese one, and then just get some games for it and I can play them. So I did that, and I got Super Mario 64, F-Zero X, and Pokemon Snap. Like the day I got the games, I wanted to stream something anyway, and I thought about like what should I stream, and then I was like, oh, I could stream Super Mario 64, and then I did that. That's the story of how and why I played Super Mario 64. Prior to this, I had never played the OG 64 version. I had only played the DS version. That was also a very long time ago, so I don't really remember much. I mean, it's Super Mario 64. It's good, you know it's good. You know, there's all kinds of arguments all over the place of like, oh, does this game hold up? Has it aged poorly? Fuck you. I don't think video games age. I think people are just boring. Yeah, moving on. Monster Hunter Rise came out in 2021, but in 2022 there was a expansion to this game called Sunbreak. At first my plan was to play Sunbreak on Switch, as I had played the base Rise. Then like a week before Sunbreak would come out, there was this trailer, and before this trailer I was like, I was excited for the game, but I wasn't like insanely hyped for it or anything. But this trailer was like, somehow it just convinced me. And I don't know, I kind of felt like it would be nice to play it in 60 FPS on the PC. So I ended up getting Rise for the PC. And because there is no save transfer, I had to replay through the entire game in a week. So I did that. And it was really fun. It was really fun. So I guess first we should talk Monster Hunter overall. I remember back in probably like 2015, somewhere there, I got the 4 Ultimate demo on my 3DS. And I remember like looking at the game and just looking at it being like, Monster Hunter, that sounds like so generic. And then I looked at the game and it didn't look very good. And I played it for a bit and it felt really clunky and weird, and I didn't like it at all. I remember thinking that it felt almost like a mobile game, which is just really funny thinking back on now. Then in 2018, I got the Monster Hunter World. Yeah, I played World, Base World. I did not play Iceborne, but I played Base World, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was good. And then I didn't really think about Monster Hunter for a long time until Rise was announced. I don't know, something about this game just looked really cool, and that kind of got me interested in Monster Hunter again. I tried playing World again. It really didn't like hook me at all. And I thought about it, like, there are these older Monster Hunter games that I, kept hearing about when I was, like, looking into Monster Hunter. And I looked if there's any on the Switch, and there was GU, Generations Ultimate. Yeah, the rest is history. It's just that Monster Hunter is such a insanely good series. It's so simple, but it's so good. I think Rise, overall, this game is somewhat controversial from what I've seen. Most people agree that it's pretty good, but I've seen a lot of people also kind of disappointed by it. I personally feel that it's not really what I want in a Monster Hunter game. Like, recently I've been playing Monster Hunter Freedom Unite on my PSP, and it's been so much fun. I really love that kind of older Monster Hunter style, and Rise is kind of the exact opposite of that. Rise is really fast-paced. It has a lot of like really fast movement, so much like quality of life features and things like that. A lot of the weight of the older games is just completely gone in the newer Monster Hunter games. I kind of like that weight. I kind of like that slower kind of game that the older Monster Hunter games were. But again, this is where the thing that I mentioned with Sekiro comes into play. With this game, their intention was very clearly to make a very high action, like fast-paced Monster Hunter game. And I mean, they did that. This game is like really like anime. That's what people say, right? There's a lot of like insane flashy moves and stuff like that. And it's like, if I'm in the mood for that, then yeah, Rise is perfect for that. In this second playthrough of Rise that I did, I started playing Greatsword. Prior to that, I had only really played Longsword. Yes, I know, I play Longsword, I'm sorry. In World, I did play Bow, but then in GU, that Valor Longsword just, ooh. Can you blame me? Can you really blame me? So in Base Rise on the Switch, I pretty much only played Longsword, and now in the second playthrough on PC, I decided to learn Greatsword, and it was really fun. I feel that I'm no longer a longsword one trick. I can actually like play Greatsword. Now, whether I'm good at it or not is another question, but I do play it. That's what I'll say. During that week of playing through Base Rise, I managed to do pretty much everything. I completed like the Valstrax quest a day before Sunbreak came out, and it was interesting because while I was playing through Base Rise, I was also playing the Sunbreak demo and trying to beat Malzeno, which was not going well. the demo Malzeno was something different. And I actually also, I did like 3 streams of my playthrough of Rise, and those were also really fun. I think I might stream Monster Hunter in the future as well. I feel like that's a pretty fun stream game. But yeah, once the week had passed, it was time for Sunbreak. So I remember before Sunbreak came out, There were a lot of people who were thinking that like, oh, Sunbreak is gonna like fix this and this issue that I had with Rise and whatnot. And it was like, I feel it was pretty obvious from the beginning that like, nah, Sunbreak was not going to fix anything in Rise, it was going to double down. And yeah, it doubled down. Sunbreak is just Rise but more. It's a faster pace, there's more anime, there's more flashy shit. And I really like that. As I said before, I really like it when games kind of do their own thing and just go for it. And yeah, I mean, everything I said about Rise kind of goes for Sunbreak as well. Just kind of more of Rise, and that's pretty cool. And I think Rise and Sunbreak have this really nice like personality, this really nice identity. They feel pretty unique. Years down the line, if you want to play this kind of game, then you're gonna play Rise, right? I don't think they're really gonna make a game like Rise again anytime soon. So I think in that regard, these games will have like a pretty good legacy. I mean, obviously we're not done with the game yet. There's still gonna be title updates. I think there's at least gonna be a title update 4, but I think there's also gonna be a 5. I think they teased that. I'm really excited to see what they do with that. In Iceborne, which I didn't play, but in that they did like the whole Fatalist thing. So I wonder if in this one they're gonna do something like similarly crazy. That would be really fun. Everyone's saying like Amatsu, but I feel like Amatsu wouldn't even be like that cool. I mean, it would be cool, but like, I kind of want it to be something just like completely insane. I don't know, fucking Yamato Kami or some shit. But, you know, I'm not, I wouldn't put my hopes up, let's just put it that way. The main point here is, if you haven't played Monster Hunter, you need to play Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is really good. And actually, I've been playing Freedom Unite lately, but it's like I'm nowhere near done with that game. So I'm not gonna include it in this video. Maybe the next one, maybe, who knows. But I'm playing it, and I'm having so much fun. It's like, that game is so good. That's Sunbreak, that's Rise. Moving on. Cat game. The build up to this game was really interesting. I remember seeing it back in like, I think it was like 2017 or 2018. I don't remember, I might be completely wrong here. I think I remember seeing it on like some kind of top 10 upcoming games this year list, and I remember seeing it and be like, oh, it's like a game where you play as a cat. And I think it was it called Project Hong Kong? Something like that, like Hong Kong Project, something like that I think it was called before. I remember thinking that was a really cool idea. And then, you know, years later, we would get Stray. This game was pretty good. I feel like this is the most like 8 out of 10 game I've ever played, where like, it's good. Nothing like mind-blowing, but it's good. I'm pretty sure this is Blue 12 Studios' first game. That's pretty fucking nice. When I first like saw the game and when I first like heard of the idea, I really kind of wanted it to be like a game where you could go wherever and kind of a non-linear game, and Stray was not that. Stray was pretty linear. But again, going back to that thing that I mentioned with Sekiro, you know, they wanted to make a game like this, they made a game like this. It's good. I respect it. I hope they do more stuff like this. I overall feel like there should be more games where you play as like a non-humanoid. There's so much like potential for fun movement in games like that. But yeah, it was a good game. I enjoyed it. Moving on. Dark Souls 1. So most of you are probably here because I played this game in 2022. This is specifically that playthrough that I did on the PS3. Dark Souls is my favorite game, and I've talked about it quite a lot already, so I don't really see much of a point in going over all that again. Instead, I'm gonna do a small little Q&A section here, because I got a lot of comments on that video, and in the beginning I was answering them, but then there started to be a lot of like the same questions, so I kind of just stopped. So I'm gonna go over some of the comments I got in that video and kind of maybe answer some questions and stuff. The first question that I got a bit of was this unpatched? Yes, that was kind of the point of that playthrough. I think I mentioned it in the video, but it must have been like in the intro. It was like pretty fast, so I guess some people missed it. But yeah, the game was unpatched. It was version 1.00. I got a few comments about like, this game runs better on my PS3. I don't know if it's because it was unpatched. They might have released some kind of like performance patch at some point. I don't know, that might be it. Overall, to answer some miscellaneous questions and stuff like that, I'm gonna explain the way I went about the whole thing. It started with me just thinking that playing unpatched DS1 would be pretty neato, so I looked into the patch notes and I found out that to play the oldest versions, I would have to get it on the PlayStation 3, because like by the time the game was released, on PC, like Prepare to Die edition. That version is like the oldest that you can possibly go, is I think 1.07 or something like that. If you want to go older than that, you need to play on the consoles. And that actually worked out for me, because I was also interested in seeing the performance of the PS3, since everyone always talks about like Blighttown low FPS and stuff like that. So this was like, you know, two pigeons with one stone. So I went and got a copy of Dark Souls on the PS3. I actually got this nice limited edition one, since it wasn't, surprisingly, it wasn't very expensive. I would expect that like a limited edition of Dark Souls would be insanely expensive, but no, very cheap. And it comes with this cool art book, so that's nice. Prior to this, the only physical thing I had of Dark Souls 1 was a German copy of Dark Souls Remastered on the Switch. So yeah. Then I just played the game without ever connecting it to the internet. I'm pretty sure if you connect to the internet and try to play the game, it might like try to push updates on you, but if you just don't connect the PS3 to the internet, then you can just play it like completely offline, no updates, version 1.0. I guess also to record the PS3, I had to get this HDMI splitter, because the PS3 has this weird like HDMI protection thing that you need to like bypass with a splitter. That's it. That's all that went into it. One interesting thing that arose in the comments that I was kind of expecting this to happen, but it was still interesting to see. There were like some people in the comments who were talking about how like the PS3 is like awful, and it's like, you know, this is like an awful way to play the game. And then there were also people saying that this is the best version of the game and that remastered sucks and all that. So my opinion is this: if Dark Souls Remastered or Prepare to Die edition with DS Fix or whatever, like the version that I'm used to, if that is a 100, then the PS3 version is like 95 to 99, somewhere in that range. Like it's a perfectly fine way to play the game. But now that I have played the PS3 version, and I've seen the interesting like patch changes and the like frame rate drops and stuff like that, I don't have any reason to play the PS3 version again. And going forward, I will be playing the remastered version, because it is just better. There are a few things that I understand like preferring about the PS3 version. Some of like the like effects, like the power within effect, and some of like the smoke effects were kind of cool in the PS3 version. I preferred those. But like outside of that, which is like a pretty small thing, the remaster just looks better. And it also has a much better frame rate. It has a lot more active online. You can do mods. And it's just like, yeah. I completely understand being disappointed in Remastered. They 100% they could have done more with it. Remastered is a pretty lazy remaster, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still the best version of the game that we have. Regarding like frame rate and how much it matters, I think some people are definitely like overestimating how big of a deal 30 FPS is. Like 30 FPS is completely playable. Bloodborne is a great game, and that's in 30 FPS. Frame rate is not like a deal breaker for me, ever. But obviously 60 FPS is a very nice thing to have. I think another thing to keep in mind is that this video, a part of it was that I wanted to showcase the PS3 version and kind of look at the frame rate drops and stuff like that people always talk about. So of course in this video I am highlighting those sections. I am highlighting off the bad frame drops and stuff like that. You know, the video was an hour long, whereas the streams in total took 8 hours. The video is like a biased view of the game. And I think the only area where it was like really bad was Blighttown and Lost Islet. I think everywhere else was pretty much fine. There were every now and then there were some bad frame drops, but for the most part it was perfectly playable. And again, this is the unpatched version. If you're playing it on like the most recent patch, I assume the performance is a lot better. But yeah, this video was obviously a pretty big deal for the channel. It was really nice to see how much people seem to enjoy that video. I guess regarding future Souls content, since that's probably a question that some people have, my channel I would consider it to be mainly Pokemon. I would say that Pokemon is my main content. However, I do play other games as well. Especially on stream, I think I will continue to play Souls games every now and then. And I might make videos on them, I don't know. By the time this comes out, I'll have probably already started my Bloodborne playthrough. Just a normal playthrough of Bloodborne, nothing special. I haven't played it in a while, so I felt like playing it. Yeah, go check out that if you want more Soul stuff, I guess. And actually, there's one more question that I got. Have I played Demon Souls? So yeah, pretty much immediately after Dark Souls, I played Demon's Souls on the PS3. This was my first time playing Demon's Souls. It was something that I was supposed to do many years ago. It was always really weird because it was like Dark Souls is my favorite game, yet I haven't played Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls was kind of the game that like I chose at the beginning of the year that like I must play this game this year, and I did. So the big issue with reviewing or talking about Demon's Souls and kind of going into the playthrough overall was that I'm obviously going to compare Demon's Souls to Dark Souls, which is not really fair, considering that, you know, Dark Souls is something that I'm really used to, and it came out after Demon's Souls. So obviously they were able to like make changes depending on what worked and what didn't. So comparing them is not really fair. But I did it anyway, because there's no way to really avoid that. But I tried to look at it as kind of by itself as much as possible, and here's my thoughts on the game. It's really good. It is really, really good. I guess spoilers for Demon's Souls if you haven't played it. Probably the biggest things that really surprised me about this game. The atmosphere, the overall like areas and the visuals and music and everything was just fucking fantastic. Like it was so good. Demon's Souls just has this really unique feel about it. Just the overall like look of the game is so interesting. I don't know how to put it, but it feels really like dreamy almost. But also in certain areas it feels really fucking like visceral. The Valley of Defilement was like genuinely like I've played all the other Souls games, and there's a whole meme of like, you know, Dark Souls swamps and like Souls game swamps. This one is probably like the most disgusting one out of them all. Like holy shit, dude. The Prison of Hope, that fucking place was so cool. I imagined when I went into there that I would hate it, but it ended up being I think my favorite area in the game. Because just the atmosphere there, the fucking, what is his name? Rudel? His screams are just amazing. Like, absolutely fantastic. And just the, like, all the small, like, noises that you hear in the environment, how, like, dark everything is, and the enemies. And I think in Souls games, there's overall like this big thing of having this scary, like intimidating area that you slowly kind of get used to, and you know where the enemies are, and you find out like what places lead to where and stuff like that, and you kind of learn the area. And I feel like this place does it like perfectly. I think it was 1-3 was also really, really cool. And I mean overall the first Hearthstone was super interesting, how you could see like first you can see like the outskirts that are like completely overtaken and like that's just completely like fucked up. Then there is like the bridge area. After Tower Knight you get into like the 1-3 area, and there you can see that they're kind of like they're holed up there, and just seeing how like the area changed dynamically, how the enemies would move around and stuff like that. Really, really interesting, and something that I don't think they've really done ever since then, and that area felt really, really unique. At the same time, obviously, a lot of Demon's Souls was very familiar. It was very much like, yeah, I've seen this in later games, but there was also a surprising amount of stuff like that that was like, you know, very unique. And I guess on that topic, the bosses. This is probably the biggest thing that surprised me about this game. The bosses are really cool. They're really fucking cool. I would say that the Souls games overall have two kinds of bosses. There's the action bosses, and then there's the gimmick bosses. In later games, we start to see more and more of only like action bosses, but Demon's Souls has a lot of gimmick bosses, and they were really fucking good. They were really good. I don't understand how in Demon's Souls they made bosses this cool, and then in Dark Souls 3, fucking 7 years later, they make the Ancient Wyvern. So many of the gimmick bosses were just like cool, like they just made me happy. The old hero, for example, is blind. You can like attack it and it'll notice you, but then if you run away, it'll lose track of you. That's such a fucking cool gimmick, and yeah, sure, it's not like the most insane boss fight, it's not very difficult, but it's just really fun. And then there's stuff like the Storm King. For Demon's Souls, I was like mostly spoiled on the bosses. I knew I had seen all of the bosses at least once before. I knew what the boss was gonna be like. You know, I've played Dark Souls 3, I've played Elden Ring, I've seen Yorm, I've seen Rykard, so I knew that they were inspired by the Storm King, so I knew what was coming, and it still just like blew me away. It was such a fucking cool visual, like seeing the fucking weird ass manta ray things flying in the air, and then there's just one fucking huge one, and then you shoot it down with your sword. The music, yeah, it's so fucking cool. So yeah, the gimmick bosses are great. What about the action bosses? Okay, so when it comes to action bosses, this game only has a few that I would consider to be like truly like action bosses. That's a completely made up term, by the way, where the whole point is just it's this dude that you have to fight and you have to roll through the attacks and you have to beat them, and there's no real like gimmick. I would say the ones that I would count in this category are maybe like Flame Lurker, Man Eaters, Penetrator, and King Allant. Penetrator was actually cool. I liked Penetrator. It was just this dude in a suit of armor with a big sword. He's pretty slow, but he has this one attack that just one-shots you. It penetrates you. I think that's pretty fucking cool. I like that. But then there's like King Allant. While I was fighting King Allant, in my head I was just thinking of like Malekith going into phase 2, jumping in the air, doing 3 flips while shooting projectiles, then launching at you, followed by an AoE. Some would probably argue that the modern FromSoft bosses are too anime, right? People call these kinds of like fast-paced fights anime. I personally don't really mind anime, but the point here is, I feel like King Allant seems like he's trying to be anime, but modern bosses do that kind of thing way better. So he and some of the others like Man Eaters and Flame Lurker end up feeling not that impressive. They're just kind of like somewhat slow bosses with pretty questionable hitboxes that have just kind of not that interesting movesets, and there's no cool gimmick to really go with them. King Allant has the whole like grab attack, which takes away levels, which is really fucking cool. But apart from that, it was kind of a lame fight. And I really didn't like Man Eaters. I mean, it was interesting seeing the origin of the gargoyles fight, but apart from that, it was pretty bad. Their design is not that interesting, and the fight itself is bad. The hitboxes are really questionable, and they're just the same enemy. There's no variation. In DS1, the other gargoyle has like more fire attacks, and it only has half its HP. So you kind of need that Ornstein and Smo thing with duo fights, and this does not have it. And they spend a lot of time just in the air. Yeah, Man Eaters are not great. I didn't really like Flame Lurker that much either. I'm pretty sure that boss is like pretty beloved, like a somewhat fan favorite type of fight. I don't really get that. I didn't really like it much, but yeah, it's a cool design, I guess. That's what I'll give it. The action bosses and the linearity of the game are probably the biggest flaws with it. I don't think the linearity of Demon's Souls is really like a design choice. Like, I feel like if they were to like remake Demon's Souls, which they did that, right? But if FromSoft were to remake Demon's Souls, I imagine they would probably make it, you know, like a more open game, like Dark Souls. The areas not being connected was probably a way to just make it like easier to make, I feel. I'm not 100% sure about that. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how it kind of feels to me. Like, I don't think they went out of their way to be like, oh yes, we want it to be Super Mario Bros. 1. So yeah, I didn't really love the fact that levels were like literal levels, like they weren't connected in any way. As I said, most of the bosses in the game are gimmick bosses. And I didn't even mention Maiden Estrella. Dude, Maiden Estrella, what the fuck? Up until this point, I was really enjoying the game, but it hadn't like really fully had that like holy shit moment for me until Maiden Estrella. I think I had seen the dialogue and like I had heard the music somewhere before, but just seeing it all in game and like the build up to that fight of like the different NPCs talking about like Maiden Estrella and speculating like what they were about and stuff like that. And the fight is like, it's literally just like an NPC enemy, but I'm fine with that. Just the experience was completely just insane. And the fucking OST, dude. Overall, great bosses, great atmosphere, fantastic atmosphere even, a very good experience. I don't think it really has all that much replayability for me, so I don't know when, if ever, I'm gonna replay it, but I am really happy that I played it, and it's definitely not my favorite Souls game, but I really respect it, and like considering that it was the first, it's really good. You should play Demon's Souls. Maybe the PS3 version though. I don't really like the way the PS5 version looks, but maybe that's just me. But yeah, next game. Is this even a game? I'm not really sure, but I mean, it's my video, so it doesn't matter. This is a Digital Monster version 20th. So it's a 20th anniversary remake of the original Digital Monster device, right? So this is where the Digimon series started. It's a Tamagotchi, but Digimon. So the backstory of this is that I was rewatching the Digimon anime. I watched it growing up, and I decided to rewatch it, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. The Boku no War Game movie has like no right being that good. It's genuinely insanely good, highly recommend it. And watching it, I decided that, hey, I kind of want to get more into Digimon. It's always been a series that I kind of liked, but didn't really ever like fully get into. Like the only game I've played is Battle Spirit on the Game Boy Advance. So yeah, I wanted to get more into it, and I decided that what better place than where it started. This thing, I would say that it's more of a toy than a game. There isn't a whole lot to do in it. If you've had a Tamagotchi, then it's pretty much that. Looking back on it now, I maybe should have gotten a DMX. Those ones have like a bit more features in them, but whatever. I played with it for a while. I had a Megadramon. That's one of my favorite Digimon, so that was pretty cool. I also had a nice Mugendramon in there. That was pretty sweet. Not a whole lot to say about the device, honestly. It's very, very simple, but it's cool. It's nice. Until the Digimon starts dying. That's when it becomes really sad and depressing. When it comes to Digimon, there's always been this kind of difficulty for me. How do you get more into Digimon? With Pokemon, you play the games, right? There's the mainline games, you play those, you can get more in the series through that. Everything kinda comes out of the mainline games, the TCG, the anime, everything, right? But with Digimon, it all kinda has its own continuity. It all kinda has its own canon. You can watch the anime, there's like a fuck ton of seasons of that. You can get one of these, like the virtual pet stuff, which is still like there's new stuff coming out in that. This is where it started, but it has very much like branched off into its own things. You can play the world games, you can play the story games, fucking Wonder Swan. Basically, with Digimon it feels like there's no agreed upon main media. But I feel like this is a pretty good place to start. The next thing that I'm gonna be playing, which as I mentioned, for this year Demon Souls was like my goal, like I wanted to play that. But for next year, for 2023, I'm going to be playing Digimon World on the PS1 at some point. That game looks really cool. I really like the way that game looks, and I've heard a lot of good things about that, so I'm gonna be playing that. Probably not gonna stream it or anything, but I might talk about it in the hit video where I talk about all the games I played in 2023. Maybe, if I make that video. We'll see. Digimon is kinda cool. I like it. Moving on to the last game. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, I played Pokemon Scarlet. For the longest time I was planning on going with Pokemon Violet, to the point where this video's thumbnail actually had Miraidon on it in the beginning, but then I changed it to Koraidon once I last minute chose to go with Scarlet. And actually I'm pretty happy that I went with Scarlet. I feel like Scarlet is way cooler. I mean, Miraidon is cooler than Koraidon, but like outside of that, I feel like Scarlet does everything better. Spoilers for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. If you have not played these games through completely, then be gone. These games are really cool. They're really, really fun. I really enjoyed them. The thing is, with the kind of build up to these games, I wasn't really that insanely excited for them. I was excited for a new Pokemon game. I'm always excited for a new Pokemon game, but like nothing that they had really shown about this game was specifically that like interesting to me. Being able to play together with people, that seemed cool. The new Pokemon that they showed seemed cool. But outside of that, like visually the game didn't look that great to me. I was kind of worried about the open world. They were pretty unclear with things for the longest time with the trailers. They didn't really fully explain like what you were really going to be doing in the game, what kind of Pokemon game it was going to be. And especially, you know, coming after Legends Arceus, that was pretty unclear. And I actually stopped watching the trailers after, I think the Belly Bolt? The one with Iono. After that trailer, I didn't watch any more trailers, I didn't look at any leaks, I stayed completely like unspoiled. I also stayed unspoiled with Legends Arceus, but that game obviously didn't have like as many new things in it. Seeing all the new Pokemon for the first time, seeing these starter evolutions for the first time like in-game, was so cool. I'm definitely like going forward, I'm not gonna look at any leaks or anything because the experience of playing through a Pokemon game blind is just so good. It's completely worth it. And yeah, these games are really weird. It feels like kind of like a mix of what they did with Legends Arceus and what they've done with previous games, but it also doesn't really feel like it builds on top of what Legends Arceus did, and that I think is because the fact that they were being made at the same time. The story, the characters are great. They're so fucking good. And the finale, Area Zero was so fucking cool. The music, everything, like the build up and how they kind of slowly reveal the whole thing of like what's going on there. I really like the Paradox Pokemon. The 4 legendaries are so amazing. They're probably like the best, well I guess they're not a legendary trio, but a similar thing. They're the best one of those we've had in a long, long time. They're really, really cool. I really like them. All of the OSTs were fantastic. As always, I mean, that's not really a surprise. Pokemon always has banger OSTs. New Pokemon? I'm trying to think of like how it compares to previous generations, like Gen 8 and Gen 7. It's definitely, I would say, better than Gen 6 and 7. I think whether better than Gen 8 in terms of new Pokemon is an interesting question. Maybe. I need some more time to think on that. But in terms of new Pokemon, very solid, very nice designs. I really like a lot of the new Pokemon. Seeing new evolutions for older Pokemon is always really nice, like just straight up evolutions, not like regional forms, but just like, yeah, there's a fucking Dunsparce evolution. The two big criticisms I have of these games is, number one, the performance. I am fine with a lot of the frame drops in the overworld. I don't really have as much of an issue with those. What I fucking hate is the boxes. Why are they this slow? They are so fucking annoying to navigate to. I guess I should have already mentioned this before, but I completed the Pokédex, and dude, managing all the Pokemon and moving them around from box to box was such a pain because of just how slow they are. It's not a huge thing, right? It's not a big part of the game really, but just I don't understand, how is this an issue? None of the other Pokemon games have had this big of an issue. Is it because of the new sprites? Because if so, then I feel like they should have just not done those. The previous ones were perfectly fine. I really don't understand that. And then the second big issue I have is, I guess, terastallization. Is that how you pronounce it? It's kind of lame. I'm not a huge fan of it. In terms of like the gameplay and like competitive, it allows for a lot of interesting strategies, like turning some Pokemon into like a really nice typing for it. In game, it's kind of lame. The way it's used in game is just kind of like a C move, where it's just this thing that they launch off at the end of the battle, and it just does more damage. And it's just kind of boring. And I think the biggest thing is, in terms of like its visual appeal, how cool it is, it's not very cool. They get this weird ass like crown on their heads, and it's overall, it just really confuses me. I feel like Pokemon is normally really good at coming up with like cool stuff that will like sell toys and shit. That's like where they make a lot of money. They have like a Mega Evolution, even like Dynamax. Like the idea of a Pokemon becoming like this huge kaiju thing. That's pretty cool, right? Gigantamax, they have like these cool new designs. Even with C moves, they're like launching off these really huge like big attacks. I feel like all of that is like pretty marketable. But then you have like terastallization, where it's just okay, they get this crown thing on their heads. With some Pokemon, it looks fine, and then with a lot of others, it just looks kind of unnatural and weird. And I overall can't really imagine anyone being that excited to buy like terastallization merch, you know? Doesn't really matter, but what I'm talking about is like the coolness factor of it. I just don't find it very cool. It's not bad, it's not like it doesn't really negatively affect my experience, but it also just kind of leaves me like confused. But yeah, in terms of VGC, it is cool though. I haven't fully kept up with VGC. I played a good amount of it in the beginning. I had this really fun team. It was a really gimmicky garbage team. I had Tyranitar with Fire Blast on it. Overall, VGC is interesting. I need to get into it more. I haven't been really keeping up with it. I love that Murkrow is OP. Murkrow is fucking busted because its only competition is Talonflame. Yeah, I love that. I love that for Murkrow. Once they come out with like the home update, where you can like send Pokemon in and out from home, I'm definitely gonna transfer my Murkrow from Crystal to it, and hopefully be able to like use that in VGC. Overall, I think I've kind of gone over most of my thoughts here. Just a really cool game. It's good. I like it. And yeah, that's everything I played in 2022, outside of, I guess, Overwatch 2 and Apex Legends. I didn't want to include those because they're not really like single player games, you can't really complete them. Yeah, but I did play those a bit. Overall, a pretty good year. I don't really play that many games. I just play like few games a lot. And I also really like replaying games. For 2023, I'm gonna try to play more new games. That's, you know, saying that, I'm just playing Bloodborne, which is replay through, and I'm also still playing Sapphire, which is kind of like a replay through. But outside of those, I'm gonna be trying to really play like new games this year. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that I have planned. I mentioned Digimon World, that's something that I'm gonna be playing, and there's some other cool games that I have planned that I might play. Some of them on the channel, some of them by myself. But yeah, overall, pretty good year in terms of games, in terms of this YouTube channel. It was a pretty great year, it was a fantastic year. This was a very rambly, weird video. I decided that this is probably the best way to do these kinds of videos, because otherwise it will just be a lot of work. Still, I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see if I manage to make something okay out of this in editing. Be sure to tell me in the comments what games you played this year and what you thought of them and all that. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you someday. Maybe. Bye.